Jeff Paterson joins us now. Jeff hosted the first live version of Rink Wide Vancouver on Saturday night. And Jeff, thank you for joining us. How did that live show go? I watched it. It looked great. What do you think of it?
No, I'm here to tell you the stories that I survived it. So that makes it a success right then and there. Technically, it went great. We had a lot of help behind the scenes. Good to get the first one in anything in life out of the way. And so it wasn't a great game, but I think there is that angst in the market that you guys were just talking about. So we were happy with the viewership and the listenership and something to build on. And 5 to go here in the regular season. And then, as you guys have been talking about, we'll be there for the playoffs, and we'll see how long that playoff run lasts for the Vancouver Canucks. I thought you were going to say I hosted the Botchford Project alumni event on Friday, and you guys were there as well. So thanks for supporting that. We had a great night, great hospitality shown by the Canucks at the Warriors game. So, yeah, busy weekend for me and you guys, and obviously for the Vancouver Canucks as well.
Busy weekend, but the Canucks couldn't get you a win on Saturday for your first episode of Rink Wide Live.
It's not about getting me a win, Quads. Don't worry, it's not. They're not playing for me. I can tell you that much.
Have you tried asking anybody if they are? You should. You should have told them that it was the first episode of Rink Wide. Jeff, what do you think of that game? We were just kind of talking about it. We're talking about some concerning trends down the stretch here for the Canucks, but Saturday night's game, what did you think of it? Casey DeSmith got brought up in our initial conversation of it. What did you think of Saturday night's game?
Yeah, without repeating too much, and I was listening, I agree with you. You got to show a little bit of discipline. I thought Dakota Joshua, I thought there could have been coincidental minors there. He gets his gloves up into the face of Akil Thomas, but I thought Thomas got a shot. Ian, the Canucks have just been scored on a power play. Kind of thought NHL officiating would try to lower the temperature, send both guys off, but they elected to pick one. And look, Joshua put the referees in a position. He definitely gets a shot in there. And then you got to be able to kill off a penalty at some point. I didn't like the first power play goal. I know you talked about the Doughty shot from the middle of the ice harm. I just thought on the Kempe one, and look, credit to Kempe. That was a big-time shot. He's a big-time player for them. But I thought Casey DeSmith, there was a great overhead look at the goal. He had lost his net there. He was way too far to his left. And then Zadorov doesn't do enough to take away the shooting lane. So a sniper like Kempe, he's going to pick his spot. And he did there. So terrible start. Discipline was an issue for the Vancouver Canucks. And yet I thought for the final 15 minutes of the first period, I thought they actually clawed their way back. Besser scores to make it a 1-goal game. And then we're all waiting for the signature moment from Elias Pettersson. If he scores on that partial breakaway, like people are saying, all right, there's the guy that signed this big contract and, he's pulled this team back onto even terms. But again, he got a decent look there. Coulda, woulda, he didn't score. And unfortunately, they continued to chase the game. And, for me, beyond the fact that they gave up the first goal in all 4 against the Kings, it's the fact that they didn't play with the lead for a second against Los Angeles in 4 games. So you talk about the definition of chasing, even in their win. They had to come back from 1 down. They tied, and then they won 8 in overtime. So they never had the lead for a single second. Talk about, trying to take the Kings out of their comfort zone and forcing them to adjust and adapt and everything else. And so, 5-on-5 for the rest of the first period, I didn't mind the way the Canucks played. But then, again, they fell further behind, and now you're chasing. So they've got to be better. Like, the top of their lineup has to be better. The bottom of their lineup, look, they wasted a goal from Teddy Bluger. We haven't seen one of those things like an eclipse. We haven't seen one of those things in forever. And unfortunately, it didn't matter. But they're getting nothing from the bottom of the lineup. And I'm really curious tonight. Like Rick Tocchet was hinting after the morning skate that we might see 11-7 again, like we did in Arizona. I think they want to get Noah Juleson in to help out on the penalty kill. And there are so many candidates, and Tocchet he didn't divulge whether he's going to go that way. But if he does, is it Pius Suter that comes out again? He was playing the wing with Nils Amon at the morning skate. Is it Amon that comes out of the lineup? Whatever the case, they're just, again, getting very little from the bottom of the lineup, as we know. And I'm delighted. Like, I'm excited for Artur Silovs. I think this guy has earned the opportunity. He's taken on Anaheim and Arizona. This is a step up in a huge way. But not only did he face the Rangers in his NHL debut last year, he faced a Boston Bruins team that had an historic run in the NHL. Like, they were not just the best team in the NHL last season, they were the best team by miles. He was the other goalie the night that Linus Ullmark came to town and scored the empty netter. So he has faced some good opponents, but just in terms of the stakes that are at play this late in the season, easily his biggest test. But he's looked good in his 2 games so far this year. So I'm excited. And quite frankly, Casey DeSmith didn't look very good last week in Vegas and didn't look all that great against Los Angeles. So why not throw a bit of a wild card into the mix here? Throw the Golden Knights a different look and see what happens. But I'm pretty confident. Canucks may not win this game, but I am confident that Artur Silovs is going to hold up his end of the bargain. I think there might be other reasons that the Canucks don't get the result that they're looking for.
JPat, we've spent a lot of time talking about the power play struggles, but lately now the PK has started to slip up as well. Do you think sorting out the penalty kill is as simple as getting Thatcher Demko and Elias Lindholm back, or do you see issues beyond that?
Well, and I wrote about this at Canucks Army over the weekend that, when you think of areas that the Canucks spent big time last offseason to address, it was the worst penalty kill in the National Hockey League. So they made the Philip Hronek trade, and they didn't do it with an eye to the penalty kill, but he's become a big part. And obviously he only played the 4 games last year. But in free agency, Ian Cole and Carson Soucy and Teddy Bluger and Pia Suter, and they've got these, the coaching systems and structure in place, all of that. And their penalty kill is 18th in the NHL over the season. For all of the talk of the great acquisitions, and there have been a lot of nice pieces added, but just collectively, the guys that they brought in to do the job, have they improved from 32nd? Yeah. I mean, there's nowhere to go but up, but 18th is below league average. And certainly since the All-Star break, there have been some issues. Now, to your question, Harm, what is the common denominator here? They gave up 4 power play goals in that crazy 10-7 loss to Minnesota. They gave up 2 in the Colorado game that you pointed out, 2 to Dallas, 2 in Vegas last week, 2 Los Angeles. Casey DeSmith's been in goal for all of those. So would Thatcher Demko have given you a couple more saves along the way? I think it's fair to say that, yeah, he probably would have. Would the Canucks have won all of those games? I can't sit here and say that, but I do feel pretty comfortable saying that Demko would have just somehow found a way to give you a few more saves while you were shorthanded. But, if they do insert Noah Juulsen tonight, I think that's an indication that the guys that they've gone with here the last few games haven't been getting it done. And it is kind of crazy this late in the season that you have to turn to a guy who is sort of your 7th best defenseman and feel that you need him in there for that one specific area of the game. But, when I look at kind of how the Canucks are getting torched, Dallas, that Jamie Benn goal, the down low play into the bumper, even Arizona, the one goal they gave up against Arizona was a quick down low and into the bumper. Doughty wasn't so much the bumper, but he was the middle of the ice. It always talks about the guts of the ice and taking away the guts of the ice. And I think the Canucks have been exposed a little bit there on the penalty kill of late. So interested to see the way they deploy their players tonight and if Juulsen is in there and how much penalty killing does he do. Ultimately, the other thing too is when Teddy Bluger takes penalties, now all of a sudden with Lindholm out of the lineup, JT Miller is forced to be one of your primary penalty killers. And we know that's JT does so many good things for the Canucks, but he's not one of their best penalty killers. And yet he continues to be in the rotation. But if Bluger, and I was surprised at this because I looked it up since the All-Star break, among Canuck forwards, Teddy Bluger has taken more minor penalties than anybody since the All-Star break. And I just, again, tighten things up. You don't think of Teddy Bluger as a dirty player or a guy that crosses the line, but there have been too many penalties creeping into his game. And he is one of their better penalty killers. And, I think also just the mention of Elias Lindholm, the fact that he's been out of the lineup here. Yeah, the offense hasn't been there for him since the trade, but can the guy win you a late faceoff? Absolutely. And he had become part of their penalty killing rotation. And so I'm not surprised that with Demko out and Lindholm out, that you are seeing a dip. Now, the question is, how quickly can they get them back? How quickly can they get them fully up to speed? And what kind of difference can they make? But look, the Canucks are a better team when they have Lindholm and Demko in the lineup. So we'll see how things shake out here over these final 5 games.
Yeah, and as we get a look at the video you took today at practice of Elias Lindholm skating, he wasn't in line rushes, so as we assume that means he's not going to play yet. Did we get an update from Talkit after practice, Jeff, or excuse me, after morning skate?
He said he's close. He called him day to day now. We know that he skated out on the road trip in Los Angeles on Friday. This was a full morning skate, but coaches always make the distinction about practices and game day skates. So I assume the Canucks will have a full practice on Tuesday, and maybe we see Elias Lindholm back in the lineup for the Wednesday game against Arizona. Whatever the case, it sounds like he is going to be back here before the end of the season. And just to see him out there on the ice, took part in penalty killing drills this morning, but part of that's numbers just because they need other guys, obviously, to work on the power play. But wasn't involved in line rushes, will not play tonight. but he's close. And just the fact that he was back around the group is promising, because while we saw Elias Lindholm, and you're right, documented evidence there, courtesy of my iPhone, sweet film, by the way, no sign of Thatcher Demko this morning. And that's not to say that he didn't skate, but where there were reports on the road that he joined the team at the end of practice, he did not for the morning skate today. Now, they're back home. It's easier for them to control their environment. He could have gone out at 8 o'clock this morning with Ian Clark, or at some other point away from the prying eyes. But that much I can tell you, that Thatcher Demko was not involved with the group in any way as the Canucks went through their drills for the morning skate.
Yeah, I keep saying it. I really hope they can get Demko back and get him some starts before the playoffs. I heard Corey Schneider talking today about how hard it is to just jump right back into the playoffs. Obviously, that's something that he has some experience with. I just quickly wanted to ask you, sorry, Harm, not to cut you off. I know you were going to ask a question, but Jeff, the one thing I wanted to ask you is just today, Stéphane Roger, our colleague over at Canucks Army, wrote about the Canucks needing to get that band back together with Teddy Bluger between Dakota Joshua and Connor Garland. Have you liked the look of JT Miller between those two guys? Do you like the flexibility that it provides you if Teddy Bluger's centering that line instead of JT Miller? What's your thoughts on putting those three back together?
Well, Dakota Joshua's looked good, and obviously he's been productive here, scored 3 times already. There were some that thought, just wait till Dakota Joshua gets back. He's part of the penalty killing. He hasn't been able to make an impact in that regard yet, but it's never one guy. The underlying numbers over the last 5 games, even like for Paterson's line and for JT Miller with these new line mates, the underlying numbers are there. There's just no finish. And that's the surprising part, that JT has been a finisher. JT's on a 7-game point streak, which I was surprised when I looked at the game notes, because it just doesn't feel like he's been as loud as he has been for much of the season. But only 1 goal in there, and that was that setup by Connor Garland against the Dallas Stars. So you've got Paterson, who's gone 8 without a goal, and Miller has 1 in 6. Those are your 2 best forwards. Even if Paterson's not at the top of his game, I still consider him one of their top 2 forwards. So, you want to see a little bit more production, obviously, there. There were moments, like I love the entry, obviously, in the play, the way JT slashed through the defense to set up Dakota Joshua. I mean, I wanted to see a bit more of that from the Vancouver Canucks as they went along. But I also can understand the reasoning to, 5 games to go, to try to get that third line back together. But this is the problem, that you just wish that you had 1 or 2 candidates elsewhere in the lineup that you felt comfortable putting into the top 6. And Pia Suter is going the other way. He's a healthy scratch and has his 1 goal since the All-Star break, which is mind-boggling when you think of the fact that you've got Mikheyev and Lafferty and Suter are all double-digit goal scorers. And yet since Christmas, it's just been a massive struggle for any of those 3 guys to produce. So if you're going to take Dakota Joshua and Connor Garland and put them back in what we would call the third line role, then it keeps exposing these holes elsewhere higher in the lineup. And if JT was able to do it on his own, or Elias Paterson was able to do it on his own, fine. But, when I look at, I know Besser scored the other night, but Besser, Höglander, and Paterson, and we've talked about this, that, PD can't use this excuse that he doesn't have wingers now. Those are 2 of, if not the 2 best wingers on this hockey club when it comes to goal scoring. And just collectively, I haven't seen an awful lot there, even if Paterson had his moments in Los Angeles and did pick up the assist on the Besser goal. Höglander's gone a little bit quiet as well, scored the first goal in Vegas, but he's kind of slipped back a little bit when it comes to finishing. So, I'm not against the idea of trying Bluger, Joshua, and Garland, because it certainly worked and you'd get some matchups lower in the lineup. But, what do your top 6 look like there? Because I just don't know how you patch the holes that exist if you take those 2 guys and drop them down onto a third line.
If the Canucks lose tonight, they'll finish the season series against Vegas and LA 1-3, essentially, not distinguishing between regulation losses and OT losses. Is there psychological risk in that lack of success against LA and Vegas, considering the high probability that you could run into one, or if not both of those teams into the playoffs at some point?
I think it's a want. It's not a need necessarily. I think for the marketplace, maybe that's who would benefit most from a Canuck victory over the defending Stanley Cup champs. It's probably the marketplace, right? If you're the Canucks and you lose to Vegas tonight, and then you ultimately end up drawing Los Angeles. Like, tonight's game really doesn't matter. The Kings don't care whether you beat the Golden Knights tonight. The Kings know what they've done against you in a 4-game season series, and we touched on that earlier. So, I don't think really it matters. What it matters is to hold off Edmonton, and I still think that's maybe where some of the psychological damage comes in. When you've ridden atop the division all season, I have to go back and look at this, but I think in the week before Christmas, the Canucks were 19 points ahead of the Edmonton Oilers. If the Oilers come all the way back, beat them on Saturday, reel them in, and clip them at the finish line, the Canucks will downplay it, and they'll say, oh, we still got home ice advantage, and it doesn't matter. We're not playing the Oilers in round one, all that kind of stuff. I still think a 19-point lead, or 19, that would be like me getting a 50-yard lead on Usain Bolt, essentially, and trying to, well, maybe that's not a great example, because I still think we know how that one would end. But I think there would be some scar tissue there, that everything had gone so well for the Vancouver Canucks to see it all come kind of crashing down at the end. Ultimately, when you get to the playoffs, guys talk about it all the time, wanting to beat your best and, tune up your game for the postseason. I do think that the Canucks are going to hit the reset button once they learn their opponent. And then it's going to be on the coaching staff to come up with a game plan that's going to allow the Canucks to have some sort of success come postseason. Now, we'll see where Demko is in all of this. We'll see where Lindholm is. We talked about that. They're a better team with those guys in there, obviously. But no, look, it would be nice to see them sort of rise to the challenge here one of these times against one of these Western Conference playoff teams, because I'm in the camp where I see all these people throwing out the numbers for the season, Canucks against playoff opponents. But look, 5 of the wins, 3 against Edmonton and 2 against Nashville, came in the first 12 games. Like, those Oilers are not these Oilers now. And this is a Nashville team that just went on an 18-game heater. So you can't take the points off the board. The Canucks earned those on those nights. Do I think they would go 6-0 if you lined up 3 games against each the Oilers and the Predators right now? No, but I don't think they'd get swept either. So it's not to say that the record is completely invalid. But I do think context matters here. And we know the struggles and the scuffles. And, McDavid wasn't fully healthy back then, even though he was in the lineup. He clearly wasn't at his best either. Canucks capitalized. They took advantage of early season schedule against the Edmonton Oilers. But, the Oiler team that they saw back then, the one that they're going to see on Saturday, totally different. And so, look, I'm curious to see. I don't know that the Canucks have to beat Vegas tonight. If they want to finish first, they probably do. But for me, it's more about, can you rise up? What does the start look like? Do you look like you're spooked in any way? Vegas is getting Thomas Hertl back. We'll see what kind of what he looks like in his return to game action in a while. They are a good team. The Canucks saw that firsthand. And the other thing that's wild to me, guys, is it feels like Nikita Zadorov's been a Canuck for a long, long time. He wasn't with the team. I guess they traded for him the day that Vegas was last here in Vancouver on November 30th. So it's been a long time since the Golden Knights have been in Vancouver. And I'm just excited. I'm excited to see the Stanley Cup champs and see what the Canucks do matching up against a team. As you said, there's still a pretty good chance that they could be a first-round opponent here.
Jeff, just before we wrap up, anecdotally, you seen the car flags coming back out. This city feels like it's getting that buzz, even if the Canucks might be maybe limping a little bit to the finish line here. It feels like this city is starting to grasp on to playoff hockey. My question for you is, what do you remember about the last time this team was actually in the playoffs? Not the bubble, because we all know what happened during the bubble, but the last time this team was in the playoffs, what's it like to see this city become enamored with a playoff team?
Well, I remember Willie Desjardins rolling his 4 lines when he had Daniel and Henrik, and he was trying to keep them fresh for a long series that ended prematurely from the Canucks standpoint. I guess I'm still sort of spooked by the fact that, as much as you want to believe home ice matters, look at the Canucks record in starting series on home ice. The last time it mattered, they beat San Jose to get to the Stanley Cup final, but Boston beat them. The Canucks had home ice advantage. The next year, Los Angeles, San Jose swept them in 2013. The Canucks were the better team in the higher seed. Calgary, was the lower seed, started on the road, and they beat the Canucks. So there's a bit of a bad track record here. But just in terms of the city, I've maintained, for the people that dump on Rogers Arena and the people that sit in the lower bowl on their phones and aren't into it, a switch does flip come playoff time. Like, I think Rogers Arena rocks come playoff time. It hasn't had the opportunity, obviously, in the better part of a decade, but I'm excited. Like, I think you're going to feel almost 10 years of pent up energy and emotion. And that's why you'd like to see the home team go in on a little bit of a ride with some momentum here so that people don't feel like they're, going to some sort of death march here to watch playoff hockey. Like, this is the payoff. It's been an incredible season. It's been so much fun. The Canucks have done and accomplished an awful lot to this point, but then you wipe the slate clean. I'm just excited to feel that energy. I think for me, more than anything, it's that feeling of energy at Rogers Arena. And I want to believe in my heart that the fans that are going to feel like the Canucks have a chance to do something here come playoff time. So yeah, whether it's tonight against Vegas or Saturday in Edmonton, would like to see them rise up and sort of post one of these signature victories that just gives you a little bit more reason to believe that, yeah, this team actually can make something happen here.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jeff, you'll be there all through it all. And of course, we have some games left. And these games certainly do matter. You will be live after the game on Rink Wide Vancouver. Second live show, Jeff. Looking forward to watching it. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, got Irfin as my co-host tonight, so looking forward to getting him on the live version. And let's see what the Canucks look like against the defending Stanley Cup champs.
Absolutely, there he is, Jeff Paterson, who, as I said, will be live on the Rink Wide Vancouver YouTube channel, the Twitter account. You can watch it, and of course, we're also broadcasting that on the Canucks Army Instagram as well. Jeff, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.